A lot of parents assume that if their autistic child walks away, changes the subject, or keeps doing what they're doing, or just says not now, it means they don't want to know. But that's not always what's going on. I've been helping parents with sex ed for over 30 years now. Makes me feel old. And as an autistic ADHD parent in a neurodivergent family, this is something I've seen from both sides. Sometimes a child can look completely unavailable in the moment and still be taking information in. So in this video, I want to talk about what might actually be happening, why pushing the moment often backfires, and the simple line you can use to keep the door open without turning it into pressure. One of the biggest misreads I see is parents assuming that no obvious response means no learning. Their child doesn't answer, they look distracted, or stays focused on whatever they're doing. And the parent thinks, well, clearly they're not interested. But outward response isn't always a good measure of what's happening inside. And some autistic kids look like they're not listening when they're actually processing. And some can look quite calm on the outside when really nothing useful is landing at all. And some kids need time before they even know what they think. So this is a bit I really want parents to get. Availability is not the same as readiness. Now, there's a few reasons why kids may look unavailable. One is monotropism. So if your child is deeply focused on something, switching gears isn't always easy. And look, that's not rudeness and it's not refusal. Their brain is already locked onto something else. Another one's delayed processing. They may hear what you said, but not be able to respond in that moment. And that understanding might come later, 5 minutes later. The questions might come later. And sometimes the real learning happens after you think the conversation went nowhere. And sometimes it's just that the moment is already too full, too much language, too much sensory stuff going on around them, too much demand, too much pressure to answer on the spot. It's not that the topic doesn't matter, it's that there's no room for it right now. And I've seen that in my own family too. And myself. You can sometimes tell straight away that there's just no spare capacity left. And trying to push through doesn't always help. Just makes the whole thing harder. And this is the bit that a lot of parents need to hear. Not now doesn't automatically mean not ever. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a line that you can use to keep the door open. This is where parents often get stuck. They know the topic matters, so they panic a bit and think, I need to do this now or I'll miss my chance. And honestly, I get it. I'm a parent too. Parents usually aren't pushing because they don't care. They're pushing because they care a lot. But urgency isn't always helpful. In fact, when you keep going because you're scared of missing the window, what often happens is that the child gets more stressed, processing drops off, and the whole conversation starts to feel like pressure instead of support. And that matters because if a child starts to associate these conversations with pressure, being cornered or having to respond on the spot, they're less likely to come back later. And for me, that's the bigger problem. So this is one of my stronger opinions on this one. Forcing what you think is a good moment often turns it into a bad one. So what can you do instead? What helps is much simpler. Say the one thing you need to say. Keep it short, don't chase the conversation, and leave a way back in. Because sex ed, it's not one big talk, it's layers. You're not trying to get through the whole topic right there in one go. You're just offering one useful piece and then trusting you can come back to it later. And that's also a much more realistic way to do this as a busy parent. One sentence about privacy, one sentence about puberty, one sentence about what to do if something pops up online, then leave it there. You don't have to force the whole thing just because the topic's important. And repeated access matters much more than perfect timing. So how do you reoffer without pressure? And look, this is a bit that really matters if you want to become askable. When you say, we can talk later, and you genuinely mean it, you're teaching your child something really important. You're teaching them that they do not have to perform understanding right now, and that they're not trapped in the conversation, and that you're not going to force them through it just because you've decided it's the moment. You're showing them that the topic is still there when they're ready to come back. And that's not avoidance, not at all. That is what makes the conversation safer. And really, that's what being askable is. It's not about getting the perfect response in the moment. It's about your child knowing that the conversation is still there when they need it. Now, I promised you a simple script that will help leave the door open. So here's the line that you can use. You don't have to talk about this right now. I just want you to know we can come back to it later. And if a question pops into your head, you can ask me anytime. Or even more naturally, you could say, you don't have to do this conversation now. I just wanted to say it, and we can talk about it later if you want. That's it. Short, calm, no pressure. And you're not demanding a response. You're just making sure that the door stays open. And honestly, that is often what makes the biggest difference. If your autistic child says not now, looks distracted, walks away, or doesn't respond much, please don't assume that nothing went in. Sometimes the learning happens later, and sometimes the questions come later. And sometimes the safety comes from knowing they are allowed to come back later and talk about it. And after all these years of doing this work, that's one of the biggest things that I want parents to understand. Your child does not need a perfect moment. They need access, they need clarity, and they need to know that you are still safe to come back to. And that is what helps you become askable.